Okay, I've started recording. So I'm not sharing my screen, right? Let's confirm if you can see my screen.
You can see your screen, sir.
All right, so today we are going to be looking at file handling in Python. File handling, how to read files and how to write files. How to read and how to write. Now, if you talk about database operation, we'll be talking about CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. That is what it is like here, but at this point in time, we want to see how we can use Python to read data files and to write to files also as a way of storage. So if you have something like a note-taking app, something has to be, when you are writing something, it is saving somewhere. If you are using a file structure, if you're using a database structure, you are saving it in a dedicated table. Okay, so the objectives of today's class is that we should be able to understand what file handling means and why it is important. So it is all about having to capture our data, our programming data somewhere, being able to manipulate it, being able to store our data, and so on and so forth, so that when next we want to either to be able to produce an outcome or an output, or to be able to use that file as a handle to manipulate data. So we should be able to, at the end of this, to be able to open a file, read from that file, write to that file, and close text files. So from this objective, we are going to be basing our stuff on text files. Our focus is going to be on text files, right? So in this way, we should be able to know how to use different access modes. How do we access the files? So we have the R, we have the W, we have the A, R plus. We will get to understand what they mean in no distant time. Now, we should be able to know how to handle errors safely using the try except block. Okay, I think if you look at C++, is it Java? So you should be talking about try and catch in JavaScript. So work with files using the with statement for better resource management. Okay. All right. So the first thing is, what is file handling? What is file handling? This refers to the process of creating, reading, writing, and managing files using a program. So you have the things that we are looking out for in this file handling. And the first one is creating, reading, writing, and then managing files using the program that we have written. So Python allows you to work with two main file types. The first one is the text files. So under text file, you will have TXT, you have CSV, you have JSON. So you need to have an understanding of how to manipulate this data. Okay. Then you talk about binary files that has to do with image file, executable file, and so on and so forth. So, but in this class, like I said, we are going to be looking, or rather focusing on text files. Now, first of all, before you can work with file, you have to open that file. So you have a function that you can use to open the file. Okay, so you have the open function, which is the first thing. Now, the open function takes two parameters. The moment you call an open function, it takes two parameters. So you look at the syntax for opening a file. Now you have an object, a place where you want to store, store the file, or rather save the file. You have it, and then what I mean is not a place, it's actually a variable. Or when we talk about a place, we are talking about an address in memory where you want to store that operation. So you can use that address to make manipulations around it. Please, if you are not speaking, can you mute your mic? Or if you want to call my attention, you just do that immediately so that your background noise will not be disrupting what we are saying. Now, the open function takes two parameters. We have to understand it. So the moment you call the open function, the first parameter is going to be the name of the file that you want to open, all right? And then the mode that you want to open it. So we discussed, we named the access modes. That there are several access modes, but we are going to focus on these four that are here. You have the R, you have this W, you have the A, you have the R+. We're coming to that. We're coming to state what they mean. All right. So you need to know, and then when you are saving your file, you must of necessity remember to put the file extension. All right. Now let's look at the modes that we want to look at, the common modes. Now, when you open your file with R mode, it means R simply means read. So this one is opened so that you can, or rather you'll be able to read that file. Now, if you don't open a file with this access rights or whatever, you will not be able to read that file. And secondly, this is only used, R is only used when you are sure that that file is existing in the address that you are calling, right? Now, as a matter of fact, when I talk about open, I'm coming to that. I'm going to reiterate it. Okay. Now let's continue. So I say that if you are opening a file with R mode, it means that you are very sure that that file is already existing in the location where you are looking for that file. But if that file is not in existence, it's going to throw an error, the file that does not exist there. Then you have the W mode. W simply means write. Okay. Now, this does the work of creating new file if it does not exist, or overwriting the file if it is in existence. Okay, so you know whether you want to. This actually is a kind of create document. Okay, so it creates that file if it is not in existence, or it rewrites that file even if it is existing before. So that is W. So if you do not want to overwrite an existing file, then you should not open that file in this mode. All right. Then next we have the A mode. A simply means append. All right. A simply means to append. That means something is in existence, but you want to add to it. So this A adds data at the end of an existing file. All right. So if your goal is not to rewrite the file or recreate the file, then append mode is a better alternative than the write mode. All right. Then next is the R+. R+ simply means read and write. Now, for you to be able to use R+, that file must be in existence before. It must be existing because there is this read operation that is already applied to it. So if the file does not exist, then the R+ mode will not be a better mode. So if you use it, it's going to throw an error back at you. Okay. Then you have X mode. X mode is actually to create new file, okay, to create new file. And then if that file is existing, it's going to throw an error back at you, right? So that's the common modes that we have to study. All right, there are other modes. Maybe in the course of your journey, you begin to encounter them, or you go and browse it, look it up. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the practicals now to handle files. So the very first thing is to actually open and close a file. So you see the syntax here, open. So the moment you type open, then this one will be the file name or the file path. So when we talk about the file name, it has to include the extension of that file. Okay, and this one is the write mode. Now let's call up this VS Code and quickly open today's class, which is the 8, right? The 8.py. Okay, so I have the 8.py. Now we want to open a file, and let me just call it my data. And I open the file using the open function, and then it's now telling me to describe the file description part. The first thing, when you look at this, it says the first thing that you are going to put here is the file description or part. What is it that describes the file? And this of necessity must be a string. So I can just call this personal data. Okay. Then the next argument is going to take is what? The mode. All right, you see the mode here. And because this file does not exist, okay, let me quickly use the read operation. And this also is going to be like this. So this is it. So if I now print, if I now run the program, it's now telling us what? No such file or personal directory. It doesn't exist. Therefore, this is not what we should use at this point in time. Okay. Now, let me tell us also, I made a mistake here. I did not add the extension. So I'm adding the extension at this point in time, .txt. So if I come to my file explorer, you notice that that file is not created here. And then furthermore, let me just tell us that by default, the name you place here or the name you are calling here should come to this place, to come to the same folder with the file that you are working with. All right, that is what happens here. Now, if I go back and create this, if I go back and create this as a write, okay, let me use the other one, R+. So you notice that this one also requires a file exists. So if I run this, it's still telling me that this no such file or directory. So it doesn't exist. This is a file not found error. All right. We're going to know how to gracefully deal with this error along the line. Now, let me now call up this file, or rather create this file using this. So the moment I do that and I click run, you see nothing happens here, no error, meaning that something worked. Now for me to if I want to see an output here when such things happen, I'm going to write a program like this and say, if my data, of course, you know that this is going to return Boolean. If my data, what do? You can print for us file created. All right. So file created. So if I run this, it now tells us file created, meaning that file has been created. So if I open this now, you will now see that file inside of here. Now, there's nothing inside of this file at the moment. So if I double click it, it's open here, but there's nothing inside of it at the moment. So let me go back to this place and then collapse this. Okay, so the next thing that we may want to do is to now add data to it. And how do we add data? We are going to use the write function. So when we call the write method on it, we inside of the write method now takes the argument, the data that you want to pass here. Okay, that is what it takes. So let's go back to VS Code and say, okay, we want to check it now. So we call upon this object because this has become an object. So if I call it my data object, then I call the file write method off of it, and I just write something. This is my first time writing to a file. Okay, so if I run this program, it's going to write inside of it. So let me click it and run it. So it has run it. If I open here, you'll now see that that thing is written there. Okay, so that is writing to a file. Now, there's one thing that is very much paramount and is very, very important. So if you are using this method, you must of necessity close your whatever at every point in time. You must need to close that file. The moment you open it, you must need to close it for security reasons at every point in time. So this doesn't change, but I cannot access this file again because of this close method. Now, if I've done this and I copy this thing outside of the close method, okay. Okay, I copy this outside of the close method and I want to, so ordinarily, if there's no close method, I'm supposed to see file created twice. But if I run this program now, okay, I'm still seeing file created 2 times. Okay. Okay, if I open, this is not supposed to work, but it is, I think it's because this is a separate block of code. But after this, and you want to maybe write to this file again. Okay, let's assume I want to write to the file again. Let me see if it will work. Okay. Okay, this is my second operation. So if I run this, do you now see what happens? Say this is my second operation. You see it's now telling us value error. All right. Why is it throwing value error? Because I have closed this thing now. I've closed it. So if I copy this off of this and I place this here, that is outside of this, if I run it, is it going to give me value error again? So if I run this, it's not giving me value error. So if I open this, you will now notice that it has added this to the file. All right. So if I open it, you did not see it, but from here it's showing that it has added it. So, but for me to make it glaring, I'm going to use the new line function. Okay. So just notice how I did this, backslash plus n. Okay. It means that that is the end of the line. And any other thing that you are going to print is going to come on the next line. So if I run this and come to this place again, we'll now notice that my second stuff has been added to that text file. And that text file can be opened with a text editor. All right, that text file can be opened with a text editor. So look at the personal data. So if I double click it, it's going to open with .txt file. Look at it here. Hope it's making sense. Okay, so that is it. You see that this thing is stored. The output of my program is being stored in an external file. So this is writing to a file. We can as well read from that file. We can as well read from that file. And let's follow this step by step. So I've talked about, okay, yes, I've now shown us that we can use a backward slash and n to create new line. So with what you can see here, at the end of the stuff, the output is going to be what you are seeing here. This is what we have demonstrated. Now, when you have a list of items that are separated with comma that you want to write individually, as you can see here. So you now see that this is a name list, but we want to store it in a TXT file. So we have this list that we want to store in a TXT file. We still follow the algorithm. The first algorithm is to open that file. If it does not exist, is to open it in write mode. Okay, so what it means is that it is going to create this if it does not exist, or if it does exist, it's going to overwrite what is in existence already. But because this is our first time of trying to do this, so we're going to use this. Now, if we want to write to, or rather append to, we are going to open it in append mode. Okay, but at this time, we are now calling the write lines function instead of write. So what happens at this is that it writes these as individual lines. Okay, to write these as individual lines. So let me replicate this code quickly so that we see how it works. Excuse me. So we have names, and this is a list. So the first one is, we'll just call it first name, and then we stop that line with a new line statement. And then we have the second one. Okay. Then we have the third one. Okay, we have this. And then we now see that let's just call it class members. Okay, is set to, we open it. So the very first thing that comes here is now our class list. Class list, and we want it as a TXT document, and we open it in write mode because we want to write something to it. So the next thing now is to call this object, which is class members, and we want to write class members. We want to write them in lines, that's one after the other. So when we do that, we'll now pass the name of this list as an argument to it. Okay, so we can now go ahead and close it. Okay, we can go ahead and then close. We'll say so when we save this and run the program, we will notice that we refresh this. Okay, we notice that we have the class list here already. So if we open this class list, we now see first name, second name, and third name in different lines. So the purpose of this is to introduce to us this particular function called WriteLines. What it means is that whatever that you have introduced with separate lines is going to write them in separate lines for you. Okay. All right. So that is using WriteLines. Now that we have written to the file, how do we read from the file? How do we read the content of the file? Because this is very, very important. When you will be doing data science, machine learning, you know that it's all about manipulation of data. So what you are going to be doing there mostly is to be reading from an Excel file, mostly CSV file, okay? We are going to be reading from those files and then performing operation inside of those files. So it's very important that you understand this. Okay, so the first step now is to follow. Okay, this is the 8. Now I want to open another folder, another file called the 8 read. Let me just call it the 8 read.py. Okay, so I need a different stuff here because I want to read. So I still follow the stuff, the approach. So we open. Now I have 2 files that I want to read. Which one do we read first? The first one is my data, my show. This first one is personal data, okay, .txt. Now the second one is class list. Okay, let's assume we want to read our class list. So we'll call class list.txt. Now we're going to open it now in read mode. So we'll do this. This is going to open this up for us to be able to read it. So we can now take the file as a handle to call the read function off of it. So we say read. Now, if you notice, you know that we have read line and read lines. So if we are going to try 3 of them. So let's assume we call read. Now, this function will take all the data inside of that particular file. So let's look at this and maybe call this content. So the content of this file that it has read is what it stores inside of this place. So we can now say, let's just say if content, then print content, right? That is, if there is something inside of this file, then print content. All right. So if I run this program, you see me getting the content of that file here. Okay, I think that makes sense. Okay, now furthermore, like when I call this function, you saw read line and you saw read lines. All right. Now, if I use the word read line, this is going to read the first line. Okay, it's going to read the first line of that document. So if I run this, you are only going to see first name. And this is what is here. But if I use read lines, it's going to read the entire line of that. So if I run it, you'll now see the entire line passed as a list. Okay, this is what differentiates it from the read. All right, so these read lines reads everything and passes them as a list. So we now know that if we use this is going to the output of read lines. Okay, the output of read lines is actually going to be a list. So we can now use maybe a for loop to iterate over this. Are we together? So we can say for I in content. Sorry, I missed something here. For I in content, what is going to happen? We can say print I, right? So if we now move this, if you now run it, you now see that it is now printing it one after the other. All right, so you need to have the understanding that the moment you call the read lines function, the output of that is going to be what? A list. So you can as well manipulate the list, and you can even print content dots, whatever. So you can count, let me just say for I, now let's see. Oh, I don't know if this is a keyword here. Okay, count is not. Okay. Okay, you now see I use the length function to check the number of items here, right? I hope you are getting what I'm saying. So the number of items inside of this is going to be here. So I can say for I in this, print now. I can say print content, and then I call I. Is this gonna work? Okay, it's telling me that this object is not iterable. That means I cannot go over it because the stuff is going to be a number. The output of this is going to be number. So this is not going to be so. So I can say for I less than this. Let me just say I is 0. Then for I less than this. Let me just print. Okay, this is 3. Okay. So I can go ahead and say for I less than this thing, print whatever. But that's not what we are looking at this point in time. Let me forge ahead. So I've looked at what now? I've looked at read line and the read lines. And I told us that the read line reads the first line of the data inside of the text, while the read lines will read the remaining lines as list. This is very important. Okay, it reads the remaining line as list. Next, we talk about appending to files. Now, you have a file already, but you want to add something at the end of the content of that file. So what are you going to do? You are going to open the file in append mode. You are going to open the file in append mode. That means you call the name of the file and then you use append mode instead of read or write mode. And then you add another thing. Now let's take, for example, want to have this. So here, for our file open, instead of opening this, I open it now in append mode, in A mode. So I now call the file the write operation on the file, and I tell it to add some other things. So what are the things that I want to add here now? Let's just say I want to add these numbers are great. Okay, so I can manually add this by myself. Okay, and I can create another line. Say, have you heard about this? Okay, and save. And so I've run this program. So if I open this, you now see that I've added these to it. Say these numbers are great. Have you heard about this? Okay. So that is how to append data to the file that you have already. Okay. Now, it's easy to forget. Okay, that is true. You know, I've been writing this program now and I've always forgot to put the close function. It's easy to forget it. Now, so that you will not forget it, or rather so that you will feel safe, it is better to use the wait statement, which automatically handles file closing, even if error occurs. Okay, so this wait statement is very, very good that you start writing. So all the things that I've been doing here, I will call it, or rather I will grade it as writing it in a manual way. Now, what I did here was to what? Okay, this is not the first one I did. So for us now to, let me just quickly comment this out. So for you to use the wait statement, you're going to start the stuff with with, then you open that connection. So when you open it, you still call the name of that class list. Okay. So you're still going to call class list, class list.txt. Okay, when you open it and you call it, you still call the mode that you want. Now, the class list is existing. So instead of using the write mode, I want to use the append mode. Okay, so in the append mode, I will just write A here. So you now use this thing as the name of the variable now that you want to use it as. Class list as I use the word lists. So when you do that, you call this. We class list as list. Okay, so this is, let me just save file. So for this now, I want to now write to it. So I call that file and say write. So what am I writing? I want to write another stuff inside of it. I say this is another name. Okay, so this is another name. Okay, so if I run this program, there's no error. So if I call up the list, you will now say this is another name. All right. So I wouldn't have to bother about whether this thing closed or whether it did not close. So if I am using the wait function, all right. So then I can as well, when I do this, I can as well now use something to, because as it is showing here, it's not telling me whether this thing is created or not. So I can say if file print operation completed. Okay, print operation completed. So if I run this, it's going to end here to tell me that operation has been completed. So it says this is the recommended way to handle files in Python. Now, the same thing I did here, I can as well come to this place and use the same approach. Use the same approach. So using the wait function, said wait open. So I call the class list .txt. Okay, I open it now in write mode, right? Sorry, in read mode. So I call it as lists. Okay, so now that I've called it as lists, I can say if, or rather, I will now say data is set to list dot read. All right. So having done this, I can say if if data, then print data. Okay, so I run this program. It's now printed. It now prints the stuff for me, everything that I've added there. So, you know, I added this another name and so on and so forth. So it prints everything for me. All right. So if I use read line here, it's still going to print the first for me. And if I use read lines, it's still going to print all of them as a list for me. So that's what happens. Okay. Now, the next is for us to look at 5 parts. 5 parts. Now, if you want to open data, let's assume, now when you look at this, when you look at this file, now, if I right-click it, it's supposed to say copy as path. Okay, so I can copy this as path if I know the part of that document that I want to open. So if you write open, you can use this way. Now, let me see what happens with what I copied. So when you look at this, you will notice that what I have here now is what? What I have here, all of them is showing me backward slash, right? Now, for this to work, I'm going to manually change all of this to, let me first of all copy this. So I'm going to change all of this to /. Okay, and then if I run the program, you see that it is still working, all right? It is still working because what I did was to copy the full system part, the absolute part of that. But I've been calling only the text itself simply because I have been using the part relative to what I would call, the particular file is in the same folder that I am using. Okay, so if I don't do it this way, another thing is to use the raw string. Now, how do I use the raw string? Which may not be necessary anyways. So if I remove this entire thing and paste this as is, then I'm going to come to tell this that this is actually a raw string. Okay, so if I run this, it still works. Now, what is it that makes this a raw string? The same way I copied the system part is the same way I placed it into my application. But I come to the front of it and I added this R. And this R tells the system that this is as raw as it is from where I copied it. So the system is going to do the translation on its own and then go back to do whatever that is there. Can I add something manually here? And I say this is added manually. And I save it. If I come to this place, I still run it, and it shows me the ones that is also that was actually added manually. Okay, so this is it as about file handling. Next, we want to check what if you want to, maybe you want to search for a file that does not exist. What happened? So it says checking, you can prevent errors when trying to open a missing file using the OS module. Now, before you can use the OS module, you have to first of all import it, all right? And then you call it off. You call it off of the path and the exist method to check if that thing is existing. Okay. Now, let me quickly demonstrate something here. Let's assume I have this and I want to do this. I said import OS. And if I don't import OS, I cannot call it. It will not be available for me. So if I said os.path, because it's going to now use this to go and check it exists. And this exists takes, first of all, the path is going to take the path description. So I have this as my raw string, okay? And then I want to check if this file exists. So okay, so if this exists, what is going to happen is going to say file exists. Otherwise, if it's not in existence, what is going to happen? It's going to say file not found. Right. So if I run this program, what's going to show? Okay. Now see what happens here. I call the raw file, the raw stuff, and I did not put the R. So if I run this program again, what happens? It says this file exists. Now, if sorry about the call, let me put my phone on the stop. So if I now change the name of the file by just placing another S here, just notice that I placed S here in the same path, and this file does not exist. So if I run the program, it will tell me file not found. So if you want to check if file exists, okay, what you are going to do is to call this. But before you call this, you have to first of all import OS. Okay, now you may want to ask, where do I apply this? Maybe as a data scientist, they gave you a file that is supposed to be in the system. So you want to check if that file is existing. And then, so the first thing is to check if the file exists. If that file exists, yes. The next thing is to check the head of the file. Okay, I'm not here to talk data science, but when you check the head of this file, it will tell you the columns that are available in that file. And with that, you will now know how to start manipulating, because whatever that you are manipulating is going to be the column variables. Okay, so that is how to check if a file exists in a particular location. Now, notice that when I was implementing this, I did not use this. I used the absolute part of that file. Okay, what it means is that it is not a must that that file must be residing in your project, but if you have access to that file, you can as well get that file inside of your project while working. Okay, but apart from that, you are going to be able to access any file in your computer, irrespective of where they are, so long as you have the route address to that file. All right. So the next thing we're going to look at is, how do we handle error gracefully? Okay, you'll notice that there was a time I used access error. I deliberately performed an access error. Okay, like here, I used append function here, and I'm not able to. Okay, let's just assume that I have a read. Okay, I try to use read in a file that does not exist. Okay, let me just try to do that. Okay, let me just edit this. We want to edit, remember what we have is class list, so I just put X to say class list, and it does not exist, and I now put R to it. So I can now say file dot just data is set to file dot read. All right, this is a syntactically correct statement. So, but if I run this, what is going to happen? It says file not found error. Okay, now how do I know that this is the problem? You know, this is actually coming from the command prompt. But if I want this to print to my system, how do I do that? Okay, you now see how to use a try except block to gracefully deal with error. So we can say try. So when we say try, we put column. Then we put the part that will work, okay, and that will work. So if this works, okay, there is no need for this particular place to execute, okay. And then if this does not work, it's going to print this for us gracefully and then tell us what is happening. Now, let's assume that inside of this, I made a mistake. Somebody told me to go and get a class list, and I made a mistake and I typed class lists. All right. So in my mind, I think I have the whole thing with me. So, but I don't know where the error, the thing is telling me file not found error. Is it really that this file was not found? There is no other clue that the inbuilt error is telling me. So for me now, when I'm writing a program that people will use, I can say, try this. Now, so then in the except block, I now call that file not found error. And then when I've called it, if the error is file not found, this is not what I want to get. If the error is this, what is going to happen is going to print, it's going to tell me that actually the error is there, but there is something else that you can do. The file not found. So you can now put something that will help the person to know what to do. You can now say, please check the file name again and try again. Okay, check the file name again and try again. So at the end, you now use the word finally. And finally says print. That's completed. Okay, so this is it. So when I run this program, instead of that file not found, what happens? It tells me file not found. Please check the file again. I wanted to say check the file name again. Check the file name again and try. Check the file name and try again. All right. So I can now come to this place. Okay, there's an error here. Let me quickly change it. So if I now change it and okay, let me just put print here so that it's going to show me something better. Okay, so this is what is going to happen. Print the data. Okay, so I now run the program. So instead of doing this now, it's going to print the data, tell me task completed when it is done doing that. So I run it, it's now printed the data and then tells me task completed. So ordinarily, Python on its own is going to throw up an error. So there are errors that you may want to try and catch, okay? Some of them are value error, file not in existence, file not found, and so on and so forth. So if you want to gracefully handle those errors, then you are going to be using try except block, okay? So in the try block, you type in what is normally supposed to happen. Then in except block, you catch that particular error that you feel like this may be the error, and then print the name, or rather whatever you want to use to replace that particular inbuilt error that the Python is going to bring up to you. Okay, so that is why this is very, very important. Then we can go further to read and write with loops. Okay, we are just going to look at this very first one, and then you can go and try every other thing on your own. All right. Okay, I'm going to do the, we're going to look at this very first one, look at the codes, and then we'll start with this, looking at structured data, because this is very important. We needed to look at this. All right. Okay, so this example is writing user input to file. Now, what the user enters is what we want to write. let's have an explanation of the code first. So we use with open. We're quite familiar with this. And then we call forth the notes. Maybe this is a note-taking application that the user would be using. Okay, so we call forth this and use the write method on it. Okay, we call this as f. All right, now this f, which is the variable now, the objects, we now pass it through, we now use a while loop in order to continue to allow the user to put the input until a particular data is struck. Okay, so we now say the text input is going to be equal to what the user puts, that's input. So the system is going to require the user to enter a note or stop to finish. Okay, now when you enter something, the system is going to check if the text dots lower, okay, because whatever that you are going to enter, this particular stuff, this particular function, what it does is that it takes in the string that is here and converts it to lowercase. So if you have dot upper, it will convert it to uppercase depending on what you are doing. So it says if that the user input is actually equals stop at this point in time, what is going to happen is that you use break statement to stop the loop. In other words, what the user wants to enter has finished. Okay, so is this going to be the best thing to do? Okay, so let's copy this now. Let's copy this and check if it works. So let me quickly delete all of this. So I have this. So if I run this program, it's going to prompt me to enter a note. All right. So maybe let me use, instead of using stop, because stop can be part of what I want to use. Okay. So I use this to notify the user how to stop the input. So I now say this. Okay. So because I don't know if there's an English word that is called stop it. So if I run this program now, it tells the user, it says enter a note. It says enter a note or enter this word, stop it, okay, to finish. So at this point in time, you know that something has been created, right? Or rather, it is what I'm saving it into a memory called text. So at the end of this, I'm going to now, so at the first instance, this creates a note, this. Now, if you check my folder, you are going to see the notes app. Okay, look at the notes here. It is already existing there, but if you open it, you notice that there is nothing inside of it. So if I start typing, this is a beautiful day. Although that I spent a lot. So I press enter. So when I press enter, what happens? Nothing happens. I can still write something. And I'll say, by this time tomorrow, I will have a lot to enjoy. I can press enter again and it is still there. Then I say, this is my last word for you. Please be prayerful. So when I put full stop, now for me now to stop this, I can just say stop it. So the moment I say stop it, you notice that the line has ended here. So so you now see what I've entered. This is a beautiful day. Although I spent a lot. By this time tomorrow, I will have a lot to enjoy. This is my last word for you. This and that. So now this is the first one. If this is your first time, then I can as well come to this place and change this access mode to append, so that tomorrow I can still come up here and still be writing on my notes. Okay, so this is a simple note-taking application that I can use to write something to a text file, so on and so forth. Then, so next we look at reading and writing structured data, a data that is structured. The data that we talked about here is not a structured data. Okay, we cannot really call this by name. We cannot call this by title, and so on and so forth. But when you talk about structured data, you are talking about something that is in tables. Okay, I'm going to call up Excel file for this. Okay. So I just have an Excel file here. And inside of that Excel file, I can just say name, age, gender. Okay, so I have age, gender. I hope we are following. Is somebody with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, I have this file now. Let me quickly save it. Save as. So as I'm saving it, I want to browse to the folder of this training. And it's in CWS Python. So I now call it students dot. So I want to save it as CSV file, right? So I save it as CSV. Hope this is the correct one. Okay. So this is a CSV file, and this is what we want, comma separated values. So a CSV file stores tabular data like Excel. So you can read and write it easily using Python's inbuilt CSV module. Now, what this means is that there is a module that has been developed in Python for you to handle CSV files. So before you can use it, you have to first of all open it. All right. Okay. You have to first of all open it. Now, we are looking at CSV writing example. We want to write something to it. So you first import, and then we use our with open, and then we open students.csv. We open it in what? In write mode. So if this does not exist, it's going to create it. If it's in existence, it's going to overwrite it. If your mode is W, all right, excuse me. Then you said the third argument here is that your new line is going to be equal to empty, when you create space, is going to take it as new line. All right. So when you have done this, then you start the writing operation. The first row, you now use the write called CSV file, and then you will write into that file, into that particular file that you called up. Okay. So this writer now, you will now begin to write the row one after the other. And when you are writing the row, you are now going to be passing the variables as lists to the row. I hope this makes sense. Okay, so let's look at it one after the other. Where's my this? Okay, so let me highlight this. And this does not exist. So I first of all import CSV, and we'll now say we open, we'll now call the file name students.csv. Open it in write mode. And then we say new line is going to be this. Okay, when you do this, you put it as the file name. Okay. So, because we are going to use this as a handle. Okay. Okay, so we call the writer on it, or whatever variable we want. What we call the writer, because we want to use this as an instrument to write into that file. Okay, so what will the writer do? You call off the CSV writer off of it. Okay. So this one writes what to that file? This writes to that file. Then you now start writing the row. The first row you are going to write should definitely be the header of the stuff you want to write. So writer dot write row. So the first row you want to write, the first is going to be name. The second is going to be what? The second is going to be age. The third is going to be, let's just say, department. And then the fourth is going to be school. Okay, this is the first one. Now, all of these things are going to be passed as a list. Then we can write another row. So in this row now, this first one is going to be Emeka. Age of Emeka, this one is going to be 21. Emeka's department is going to be SOE. Or SCN. And the school is going to be 6. The second one is going to be Chioma, 20, department. and the school is still going to be 6. Okay. So if we run this program now, these actions are going to be executed. Hope there's nothing. Okay. Now, how are we going to be sure that this action is executed? We can tell this. Print task completed. So if we run this, what is it telling us? Permission denied. Why is this saying permission denied? Okay, I don't know why it is saying permission denied, but let me see if I can delete what I already have here and see if okay, I've deleted it. So let me run this again. So it has created it. Look at it here. So if you now open this with Excel, you now see what we have here. Okay, so this is creating the file. So it wasn't showing up, possibly because I created it manually. I don't know why anyways. So the first thing is to write to it. Now, but I don't think that the purpose of this is for you to be writing to it. I don't think that the main purpose is to be writing to it. I think the main purpose should be to read, because if you are doing data, you will not, doing data science, you will not be writing data that is up to maybe 1,000, 20,000 rows. So the best thing would have been to, I think the best thing is to read it. So, but this one, you have the opportunity to write a program that writes this thing in a tabular form for you anyways. So, but we've seen this. So let's quickly, class is taking long. My battery is almost drained. Okay, so when we come to this, we want to now look at this. And this is reading the files. So let me just make an explanation on it. Okay, so first is we open with open students of this, we open it as a reader, sorry, as a in read mode. We open it in read mode. So when we do that, we set this object that we want to read this, or rather, this thing is read and saved inside of this as a folder. So we can now go ahead and print this, all right? So we now say for each row, because it's a kind of that this thing is having that table. So you now say for each row in that data, in that document here, you can say print row, okay? So as you are printing row, it's going to print, this is the first row, this is the second row, this is the third row, and it's going to release it as lists. I think so. So if I now run this program again, you now see that the first is the list, just like we stored it. The second is the list. The third is also the list. Now, knowing that this is actually in form of tables like this, you can perform several actions that you already know on it. Like if you want to get somebody from computer science department, you want to get somebody from computer science department whose name is, or rather, somebody from computer science, you want to get name from computer science department when that person's age is 20, assuming that this guy is also from computer science, this guy is also from computer science, but you want to get the particular person whose age is 20. You are going to write a program to get at this. Okay, so how are you going to do that? That is beyond the scope of this class. Now, but the important thing is that knowing that this thing is actually passed in form of a list, now you can use operations on lists, slicing, and so on and so forth to get chunks of data from this. Okay, so that is it. Okay, let me quickly just do something now. If I say data is equal to, rather, I cast this as list. I say print data. So what do I have here? If I run this, I'm going to get list of lists. Are you getting it? I'm going to get list of lists. This is what I have now. So the first list becomes index position 1. This is the index position 0 rather. The second list becomes index position 1, and this is index position this. So if I now print lists and I pass, data, and I pass this, see what is going to happen. It's only printing this for me now because this is in the index position 0. Now, if I want index position 1, and inside of index position 1, I have index position 2, because now, before I go further, this particular one describes, let me just make some manipulations. So this particular one describes the head of the data, right? So we know that in that table that we have name, we have age, we have department, we have this. So, and this is age. I can now say if data, and what is in index position 0, if the data in this index position 1 rather, if the data here if the age, I'm not coordinated, but what I wanted to do is to see how I'm going to use this as a variable to grab whatever that is there, whatever that is in the lines. But the point I'm making now is that I can come to this. The first one is index position 0. Index position 0. The second one, so if I want to print, let me just, I did not prepare to do what I'm doing now. So if I want to get the position, the age of that person in the second row, is going to just going to be like this. So if I run this, I'm going to supposed to get 21. Sorry, this is going to be 1. Okay, look at it here. So this is it. So I think that brings us to the end of this class for today. This is how to read this. Then you look at practical applications of file handling. You save your data and log, reading configuration files, storing and loading data sets, okay, which is what we just did with CSV file, keeping records in small local applications. And then we have hands-on lab exercises. So you try to see if you can perform any of these documents, exercises. Because when you hit rock, that is when you become stronger and stronger while you are coding. Okay. So somebody like me, I still look up things. I still look up a lot of things, not just things. Using Google, using videos, using ChatGPT, using every other resource around me. So, but the thing is for you to know how things work. And then the more you advance, the more you seek knowledge in order to advance whatever that you are doing. Okay, so this is where we are bringing this to a close. So if you have any question, you may proceed to ask. Otherwise, we'll call it a day for now.